Hello again, fight fans. This is Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and I am joined by a man who will be entering the octagon for the 10th time at UFC 248 on Saturday night. There, he will face two-time junior college national wrestling champion and Daniel Cormier protege Deron Winn, and that man is the third of his name, GM3 himself, Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald, what is up, and thanks for the time, just days away from your return to the octagon.
Yeah, I'm good. Just getting the weight down a little bit for that final cut, and I'm ready to get in there and rock and roll.
How easy is your process? Because you've been around a long time. Has it gotten progressively easier? Is it set in stone, or with new information that always comes in the sport on science and sports sciences, it always kind of evolves over time?
I mean, it definitely is as you get, and it's changing for me anyway because I'm getting older and my body's changing a little bit, so my approach also has to change. Now I go into fight week a little bit heavier than I used to, filled out a little bit, but it's still as easy as it ever was. Never have a problem making weight.
I've always wanted to ask you this watching your career, because I'm sure when most people read your last name, they are likely to mispronounce it. I tried to watch videos of your fights, try to get the right pronunciation. Has that been as great a life challenge as fighting in the octagon to get people to say your name right? Or have you been around long enough at the highest level? Finally, it's less of a problem now.
Hey, it's not as much of a problem as I thought it would be. Everyone's pretty close or spot on. Good enough to pass it off for TV, so I'm not too mad about it.
Before we get into this fight coming up, I wanted to go back to the Anders fight. It was a split decision loss for you that I watched again yesterday. You've had 22 career submissions. 4 of your 5 wins in the UFC have been submissions. Now, granted, a guy like Anders is not easy to take down, but it would seem like that would have been, going into the fight, an easier route for victory for you. But there wasn't really an urgency from you from that. Was that just something going into the fight? You and your camp, you and your team felt a lot of confidence you could strike with them. Was it more of a priority, and the heat of the fight, it kind of just evolved into striking more? Or do you feel it doesn't matter because you firmly believe you won that fight and the judges messed up?
When I got as many submissions as I do, the part of the game plan is always to either take them down or get them to commit to a grappling exchange so I can have a possibility of getting a choke. But it's just one of those things where, I shot in once. Anders has a lot of strength, like just with bracing his body, like moving forward with his mass and like having a strong centered stance, from years of football. So it felt like at least it would be more trouble than it was worth to try to take him down. And, maybe if I committed a little bit more, it would have been easier. But then I started, piecing him up on the feet. And I felt, my corner felt that I was winning with the boxing exchanges, and nothing he was throwing really hurt me. There's a couple things that got me off balance. And even in that first round, when I rewatched it, I was like, okay, I can see why people would think that shot hurt me because I went down right away, but that was one of those ones where I was bent over and hit my head, and I was like, it's not too bad. I was like, I'll go down and act like I'm, kind of play possum a little bit and see if I can get him to come down, but he was way too smart for that. He was like, nah, you come back up. So, yeah, but then, like I said, I ended up outboxing him, and I can complain as much as I want about the judges, and especially lately we've seen so many weird decisions and just not having a well-established criteria for what we're scoring as a significant strike and what we're looking for in terms of moving forward or octagon control. But at the end of the day, I'm supposed to finish guys, and I didn't finish them. So I only have myself to blame for that.
Now, when people watch the fights and that haven't been a part of the sport, even fighting on a high level like you have, and they'll hear about, the takedowns, it's tiring, it's not worth it. And like you said, he used his weight well, so it really didn't seem worth it. But, a person's going to be like, that's his best way to go for the submission. He's a submission ace. Explain to people that don't really understand it why, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, especially on something like that, and it's worth it. Like, how much does it take out of you to have a failed takedown or a takedown that doesn't work, and how much does it affect you in a fight? Because you've been around long enough to really know what's the thinking inside a fight where like, you know what, the striking's going fine, this probably isn't worth draining myself for.
I mean, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. So in that specific one, maybe if I really committed to it and had a couple more wrestling exchanges and like really committed to the reshots and mixing it up on them a little bit and getting into some more high-level wrestling takedowns, I might have been successful. But again, I thought I was doing fine on the feet, and it's like, why why put myself in a position with a guy who's known to be a big power puncher? Because remember, you potentially fail on a takedown in an MMA fight, more than likely you're going to be open to strikes, exiting. At the worst case scenario, you got to really bail on the takedown, or you're in a wonky position, you're open to a big overhand or a kick or something. And we saw him, I forget the guy's name, but he knocked out that guy when he was trying to stand up with that big kick.
Yeah, I remember talking about,
So that's a possibility, right? And then the other possibility is you just get pancaked and you end up on bottom, which that I'm fine with, but it was very apparent to me that he wasn't going to follow me down to the ground. So in that specific case, it's like, well, if I think I'm winning, me and my team think I'm winning on the feet, why am I going to waste all that energy into something that like might not necessarily chance, because he was not going to the ground.
Yeah.
So it was like, this takes a lot of energy when I could use that for something else. Like, I hurt him 2 times in the fight, hurt him with a big body kick, and I walled him at the end. And like, there would have been like the time to maybe even go a little harder on the feet instead of worrying about a takedown where it's like, oh, if you get the choke, you win. It's like, yeah, but if I don't get the takedown and I leave myself in a dumb position, I was already, in my head, now I take an unnecessary risk.
So what's the big takeaway from this? Is this like, because a lot of people went into that fight thinking, oh man, if it's standing, that's going to favor Anders, and you did very well, and you probably, in some people's eyes, probably won the fight standing with him. Is the takeaway this is a new version of you that we will see more standing, or is the takeaway because it was a split decision, didn't go your way, to use that striking that continues to get better, but also mix it up, show the complete toolbox, not only just on a off, putting opponents off balance, but this judging. Maybe judges will see you going for those takedowns, mixing it up. Is what's the takeaway from this kind of situation?
Well, there's a couple different things. One is, definitely putting it together, right? And like, I'm definitely going to start using more and more of my stand-up because, I've been striking and fighting MMA for a long time, and I do just fine in the gym with a lot of high-level strikers. But there again, it doesn't matter what you do in the gym. It only matters to people what you do in fights, right? So that's on me to show people that, like, hey, I'm a complete mixed martial artist. I can strike, I can submit people, and I can wrestle. So obviously everyone's seen the submission skills in the wrestling, but then they kind of forget about the striking, especially when, like, my one big knockout in the UFC was against a grappler. So it's like, that guy's not really a stand-up guy, so it's whatever. But now this last one, it's like he was, like you said, it's supposed to be the big striker, and I showed more of that. And that as far as changing, if I change how I fight, it would be now I know that I really got to open up if I want to sway the judges. Like just cracking a guy and hurting him, even when it's really obvious, isn't enough.
Yeah.
Once you crack him, you got to like go nuts. You know what I mean? Or actually have a big flurry of some kind, and then if you're going to use the takedowns, like, and mix it in, like, it's not the worst idea, and maybe just pick and choose the right time you're going to do it, because they're not giving any freebies out here. It's always a toss.
Now for your fight coming up in a few days against Deron Winn, on a pure experience level, this is a crazy matchup. 33 fight veteran against a man with 7 pro fights. I mean, hell, you have more fights in the UFC than he has fights. You haven't fought someone with this little experience, when I was looking it up, since Valor Fights 36, like 4 years ago. Before we get to the technical aspects of the fight, educate me and the people that watch this on how experience can be advantageous in a fight, and how experiencing various things over a career through many fights in a fight, can be very beneficial. Like how, maybe seeing certain looks having not seen it can be an advantage, that experience.
Yeah, it's a huge advantage. And, take nothing away from my opponent as far as competition experience, strictly speaking, like general sports competition.
Right.
He's got a lot of wrestling credentials, right? He was a 2-time JUCO champ, 3-time All-American. I know he's on the senior national team, wrestled some high level competition. So in that sense, he might even have more competition experience than I do. However, like you said, I have way more fight experience. I am very used to and comfortable with people trying to punch, kick, elbow, and knee me and do all this other stuff at the same time. Whereas that's still a very new thing for him. And I don't care how many sparring rounds you put in, it's never going to be the same. It's going to help for sure, but it's never going to be the same as getting in there with a guy that wants to take your head off in front of God and everybody. So that's going to play a big role in it. And like I said, I got more fights in the UFC than he has fights, period. So I wouldn't say no pressure, but not as much pressure for me, right? There's going to be no octagon jitters. I'm not, a couple people would think that my back would be against the wall because I've had some, decisions not kind of go my way in the viewpoint of, in fact, most of the MMA media for the last two split ones I dropped, I think it was like every site but like two or three gave it to me, and that's like out of 20. You know what I'm saying? So if anything, it'd be like, well, you've been off and on lately. Your back's kind of against the wall, and like in a sense that's true. But on the same hand, this kid's 1-1 and missed weight one time. You know what I'm saying? And like his last performance, even though it was a decision, it wasn't like an extremely exciting fight by any means. So he's gonna have that pressure coming in. He's going to have the pressure of being the next little DC or whatever. So I think in that sense, I'm going to be much more comfortable and hungry in there than he is.
And I'm glad you brought that up, the back against the wall, because I was going to ask that later, because a loss would be 4-5 for you, but you make a great point in that they were close to the decision. A lot of people thought you lost those. Do you feel that the promotion would give you the benefit of the doubt? Because there's some people that it's, black and white. Oh, 3 in a row, 4-5, we're going to let you go. But then there's some people that have losses, but they're exciting. Like they say, they want exciting fighters that put on a good fight. Do you feel confident that that's why you don't feel any extra pressure going into this win or lose? Because you feel the UFC will give you the benefit of doubt as a guy who's put on good fights, exciting fights, and deserves to be in the promotion on that alone, aside from just talent?
I think I have a little bit of peace of mind in that, and I think right now I'm 5-4, I believe. So I still a little more on the winning side. Not quite 500, but I'm more on the winning side than the losing side, which helps. And all my fights, like I said, all my fights that I've won in the UFC have been finishes. So lately I had, the two decisions were the Kevin Holland one. I could see how people that was a very grapple heavy fight, and that was one where short notice, and I was just trying to get in there and choke the guy, and maybe the game plan needed to be tweaked a little bit, especially for what I was doing training wise before that. And then the Anders fight was, it's usually what people want, mostly on the feet. There was a couple big moments, but it wasn't like either of us did anything crazy, but still a decently exciting fight. And then all my other fights, I put two people unconscious completely since I've been in the UFC. I got a big kick knockout, and I have 1 of 10 anaconda chokes on top of that. So, there's a lot to be said. And I know Dana White said before that it's not always about, it's not as much about wins and losses as it is about A, exciting fights, and B, do they believe that person can be a star or a future champ? So, and I feel like I can be both those things, and I can bring a lot of excitement to the UFC if I, get in there and just kind of let loose a little bit and fight.
You have a 7-inch height and a 6.5-inch reach advantage on Deron Winn. Assuming this fight plays out similar to the Anders fight, how important is it to make those advantages pay off in spades in this fight? Has that been a priority in camp? How technically do you make reach play for you? Is it about footwork, working a consistent jab? Is it just about finding your range very early and playing off of that? Especially since he's wings bombs and he's unusually small for a middleweight.
Yeah, no, his body type definitely presents a challenge, and I think that's definitely led to some of his success in wrestling, right? Because the lower man at his weight classes, he's always going to be the lower man, right? So, yeah, but unfortunately for him, in any martial art that has striking in it, your length is a very big determining factor in how much success you're going to have. Mm-hmm. So when he's that much shorter, you can compensate for it. But for me, if I keep him on that, or even if I choose not to, if I have the ability to keep him on the end of my jab, now I dictate where the fight's going to be. And not only that, but just by him being so much shorter, he has to come to me to do anything. Yeah. So no matter what, just basically hit him before he hits me, and no matter what, he has to cross the plane, where he's in danger of striking before I am. And not only that, I'm sure he's going to want to get it. This is his only choice. He's going to have to get in close and throw those little looping punches, right? Well, if you look back to my fight with Toyota, I love fighting on the inside. I'm elbowing people all day long, throwing knees. So if he wants to fight in a phone booth, it's going to be a real bad night for him because we have a common opponent. And we both won, but he was in there, face to face, still getting kneed and beat up and tiring out near the end of the fight. I'm not going to tire out And my inside clinch fighting, he's going to get sliced up at the very least. And he's going to get hurt a lot more if he decides to fight me like 3 inches from my face.
Even though it hasn't shown up as much, as in his fights as we all thought, like he has the wrestling credentials, like we mentioned before. Is he the most skilled wrestler you faced in your career, this very long career? And is there a curiosity on some level to get on the mat with him and test your very good grappling and submission skills against that? Because he's likely to have these great wrestling credentials, but we've seen people with great wrestling credentials go into the MMA and the grappling, they don't have quite the same success. You've proven it on the highest level. You can submission grapple. Is there part of you like, you know what? Maybe I can win this anywhere and maybe take it to the ground. If he takes me down, whatever. I'm the better submission grappler. Let's see how good his submission skills have come.
Oh, and the beautiful part about this fight is, like you just said, I don't care if he takes. If he takes me very first UFC fight against Spicy, he said, "Why would I take down a black belt this early in my career?"
Yes. Yep.
So like he didn't even look for a takedown. I think maybe 1 or 2 times, and even those got stuffed. With me, I'm not sure if he'll look for a takedown or not. I would think he would after I start punching him in the face enough. Then you're gonna go back to what you know best.
Very
right?
true. Yeah.
But I'm not, because I've got a ton of submissions. Clearly, like you said, I'm dangerous on the ground, right? A lot of people, they're like, oh well, he's a submission guy, but he trains with Romero sport. Well, I'll take him down, and they end up getting submitted. If I had to bet money on it, I would think he'd try to stand first and then shoot. But who knows? He might shoot at me right away. But that's the beautiful part of it. While I don't want to let him take me down, all I got to do is make him work for it a little bit, and I either pop right back up or I take his neck or his arm home with me. Like, there's no fear on my part of him taking me down. And like his last fight, and now Darren Stewart's tough, but he's not known as a ground guy. And Darren Stewart stood right back up at will pretty much every single time he got taken down in that fight. So if Darren Stewart can get up like that, there ain't no way in hell he's holding me down.
Now, what the main event on your card is a major fight in your division. What are your thoughts on Yoel Romero and Adesanya as a fight, and then as a booking in general, having him have come off a loss, getting a title shot?
If you're going strictly from like a numbers in the sense of like who's winning and losing, then it doesn't really make sense. So like in boxing, you probably wouldn't have that, right? Yeah. Because you got the Ali Act and all that other stuff. However, luckily we're not boxing. And I definitely think it's the better fight to make because Borachina's sidelined right now. So like that would have been the clear one, right? Yeah. And then maybe, see what happens there and then go back to Romero. But since he's on the sideline, everyone loves watching Romero fight. The dude's a freak of nature. Like, he's one of the scarier guys in the UFC, period. So, and the fact that you got Adesanya, he's a boisterous character, always is a really good on the mic, speaks his mind. And then he's calling out, he's like, I want to fight the guy everyone's afraid of. Because, like, you say, okay, well, he's on a 3-fight losing streak. Well, the 2 decisions he had with Whitaker were close. Yeah. You know what I mean? It could have gone either way. And then even with Borachina, that one was close. Yeah. And no one else won. Everybody else he fights, other than those 2 people, he's just ran through. So that's going to be a real good fight. It's a big money fight, and I think the UFC was really smart to put that matchup together.
Last question, because I don't know many people, because you are the third of your name, right? You are Gerald Meerschaert the third. What is that like? Is there a prestige? Is there a responsibility when you are the third of your name? Do you feel like, now, are you the third of your name on the highest level? Are you the most famous? Are you trying to, is there thoughts to have the fourth Gerald Meerschaert? Like, what, tell me. I don't know. I rarely know any juniors, let alone a third. What comes with being the third?
I probably a safe bet that I'm the most famous of my name. I'm also the only one to really be around when the internet was a big thing, so I kind of have an advantage. You know what I'm saying? So, fun fact though, I did not know this until very recently. I'm still the third, but I'm named off my paternal side. My great-grandfather and my grandfather were both Gerald, so I thought. Well, it turns out, because I was supposed to be named after them, it turns out my great-grandpa on my dad's side was actually Gerard.
Oh.
And And my grandpa was also Gerard. However, when he joined the Air Force, they said, your name's Gerald. And when the government decides that's what your name is, you can't really change back.
Wow.
So then I just ended up being Gerald. So I have a son, the plan is I'll probably name him Gerard, and like he'll just be Gerard, but I'll kind of keep it going if that makes sense.